I want to thank you all for your active participation and for the fact that you all brought in your convictions, your commitments, and thank you for all the compliments. I noticed a gentleman who said that I was minister under Abubakar and that I was part of the making of this constitution. I think his reading of history is upside down. The constitution was headed by a panel, was done by a panel headed by Justice Nikki Toby. It was not appointed by the Executive Council that I belong to. It was appointed by a Supreme Military Council. It gave its report to the Supreme Military Council. I did not participate in its deliberation. I'm not party to it. I have opposed it from that time till now. I have no executive collective responsibility in that constitution because the Supreme Military Council was the lawmaking organ of the government that I served as minister. The Executive Council never entertained one memo on that constitution. So I could not have farmed in a land that I did not enter into. Having cleared that, let me say that what is obvious from what we are talking about today is that we are all agreed that the only condition in which we can continue to remain in this entity called Nigeria is that that constitution should be revisited. And that our various parts of Nigeria that signed up for independence must be allowed to go back to the conditions under which we signed up for independence, namely the sovereignty of the various areas in their mineral resources as well as their domestic security. And that what holds us together was the common issues like customs, immigration, external defense, to which we can contribute equally. Now, having said that, how do we get through this? Now, reaching a consensus in politics is not a very easy thing. Ordinarily, the best way to reach it is to fight for elections on the basis of these views. And if the party that supports this view wins, then it will implement it. And sadly, the party in government today had in its constitution the restructuring of the federation and went ahead to set up a committee headed by the governor of Kaduna State, Governor El Rufai, which recommended that there should be reversion of all oil wells to the states and that the federal government should only own the ones on our continental shelves. There should be domestic police. Every state should have its own police. His views triumphed in his National Executive Council. But sadly, when the president was accosted by it in a public press conference, he says that our problem is process, not constitution, whatever that means. So this is akin to a military dictatorship, in which a man abandons the manifesto under which he was elected into government, abandons the will of his National Executive Committee, as expressed by a committee it's appointed, which reported to it, and it upheld its report. There is this feeling that we are really not practicing true democracy in Nigeria. Because if we are, the party would have held the president accountable for abandoning the manifesto. It's not possible. What we are doing as Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum, you should support us by your various organizations standing up for the resolutions we have taken in our various areas. A majority of the people of this country have declared for restructuring. They have held rallies in various parts of the country with all their leaders and proclaimed for it. They can never be 100%. They may be support restructuring, but the majority do. And politics is all about review of the majority. The majority must have its way. Now, if we can take our political system more seriously and have young people get into it and ensure that the parties live up to the democratic requirements of their existence, we'll be nearer to the solution. If those who elect to the legislature exercise the mandate given them by our resolutions and keep to it, we will have a majority of this country talking for restructuring. However, we will continue to seek diplomatic ways by meetings, by conferences, by
if possible, legal challenges in court as to the validity of our extant constitution. Unfortunately, our courts are appointed by the executive. Even our Chief Justice is removed without compliance with the procedure for removal. And so you can see a country in dire straits, only held by the sheer will of God. All the factors that should keep a country together have disappeared in Nigeria. The wonder is how we have survived until now. It is difficult for our children to believe that there was a time that we had order. When I was discussing education the other day in television, I told them that I went to a primary school where my classmate was the junior brother of my father's driver. There was no school for the minister's son and another one for the driver's son. The standards were equal in all public schools. Chino Achebe went to a local school, primary school in Ogidi. Wole Soyinka went to a local primary school in Ijobula and in Ogun State. But they became Nobel Prize winners. They became world-class international professors. Now, the point is that we must take Nigeria back to that stage where truth will be valid, where superiority of argument will prevail, where the common good will endure. I went to University of Ibadan and I was elected president of Students' Union in a Yoruba-dominated university. And it was just after the war. The very year the war ended. The war ended in 1970. I went to Ibadan in 70-71 session. And the Yorubas voted for me against the Yoruba man. You would have imagined that coming after the war, tribal differences and feelings would have been at its uppermost, at its maximum at that time. But not for the urban and cosmopolitan Yoruba people. In the same way, they made Zik leader of the City Council of Lagos. They made Mbono GK deputy speaker of Lagos. And Zik almost became premier of Western Nigeria. Our youth must come together and be united in ideas. Ideas rule the world. Today, Italy has found a cure for COVID-19. And China claims to have found a cure yesterday. It's not a matter of where you come from, it's a matter of what you profess. I do hope that Tobechukwu and his colleagues will not stop in this commendable effort to promote discussion on these issues. The more we discuss about it, the more we will be able to assuage the feelings of our fellow countrymen and women who have very misguided and false impressions of the concept of restructuring. The truth cannot be hidden. It cannot be hidden for too long. As the Igbos say, when you are preventing a child from taking what belongs to him and you raise your hand up so that his height will not attain the object, at some point your hand will be weak and you'll bring it down. No matter what our president and those who support him do, they will be tired of obstructing the will of the people. The time for a radical restructural change has come in our country. Those who oppose it are wasting their time. Our children are already impatient. They are rearing to go. And it's not limited to the Southeast. It is all over Nigeria. The country can no longer meet the aspirations of its people because of governance. If we do not address governance, our country will fail and fail disastrously. And God forbid that it should happen under our watch. I thank you all for your contributions. I urge you to be steadfast in your conviction. I urge you never to give up. This is the time for warring with our minds, and we must give it our best. Thank you for this opportunity.
So, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful concluding statement. We will be bringing back.
Well, this okay. I don't know what your plan is. This is now 9 minutes to 10.
Yes.
And I think we will be rounding up. And
we are rounding up by bringing Adebanjo for his concluding statement.
Excuse me, Mama. Before we bring in Adebanjo for his concluding statements, we are not going to take any more questions now. The time is running out. If I will ask a few questions which I think maybe some people have tried to bring out, but if I'll make it clear so that they will not give their concluding statements. One, there was, in a forum I belong to, I asked a question: is there an organization in Nigeria dedicated to fighting for restructuring? Somebody said, well, we have a Hanese, a Fenifere, and so on and so forth. But I said, those are sociocultural organizations. Have the people talking about restructuring and say, okay, let us form one organization, and this organization is dedicated to fight for restructuring in Nigeria? That is one. Second, from comments, it's being assumed that the Northerners generally oppose restructuring. But in our last week conference, we had Adamu Garba spoke so passionately of restructuring Nigeria by amending the constitution. We also listened to even Alhaji Tanko, as I said, he favored going back to the 1963 constitution. So my question is, have the organizations like Ohanese and Afenifere tried to identify core Northerners who believe in restructuring and said, if they are governors, how do we cooperate with them? If they are not governors or in elected position, but they are politicians, how do we get those people elected in their states? What help can we render them so that when they get into office, they may fight for restructuring? My third question is, we assume someone has asked, what is the position of Southern legislators about restructuring? Have Ohanese, Afenifere, and South and Middle Belt Forum identified Southern legislators who believe passionately in restructuring, but are maybe constrained by the system, and say, how do we work with you guys to achieve restructuring? Have they identified Northern legislators who believe in restructuring and say, how do we work with you guys to achieve restructuring? My fourth question is, when people talk about restructuring referendum, in law, we have what is called ground norm. And the ground norm we have in Nigeria now is the Nigerian constitution. There is nothing you can do in Nigeria now without being based on the constitution. So if you are saying, bring down the constitution, effect change, referendum, it must be grounded in the constitution. So the only thing you can do is, if you think that the 1999 constitution does not allow you to restructure, the only thing you can do is to fight to amend the 1999 constitution. So the only people who can amend the constitution are National Assembly. Are all those fighting for restructuring say, let us identify the senators, the House of Representatives who believes in restructuring, and say, how do we help you guys to amend the constitution to help us achieve our aim? The final question I want to ask in this regard is, okay, if we don't have politicians in elected positions now in the Southeast and the Southwest, is there anything we can do to help the young men to get elected who will fight for restructuring? What can we do towards that? If you are saying, okay, those in diaspora contribute money, if we contribute money, who are we going to give it to? Is there any organization that is existing and say, let me give a final story, please. Let me talk about Nnamdi Kanu. Nnamdi Kanu is able to get funds because he is a single person fighting for one agenda, one single agenda. And so people look up to him at this single agenda. This one man, we are giving you money to do this. So if you say, okay, restructuring, is it possible to have one single person in Nigeria say, this is the symbol of restructuring in Nigeria. This is the organizational symbol of restructuring in Nigeria, so that everybody who wants to support restructuring, fund this man, give money to this man, and we will make sure that we hold him accountable, that every money you contribute is being used for restructuring. Can we now say, okay, these are the steps. If we want to achieve restructuring in 5 years, this is what we are going to do in the next 6 months. This is what we are going to do in the next 1 year. This is what we are, because it cannot fall from heaven. There must be step-by-step actions to be taken to achieve this. Has this been done? Have we laid down the steps that will lead us to restructuring so that we can start doing it?
Thank you very much, Dan. So I don't know, between Nwodo, Chief Nwodo has already given his concluding statement. I don't know if he would want to address that question once more before we go to Adebanjo? I think it's getting late now.
No, to be honest with you, I don't believe in setting multiple organizations. Political movement for an issue like restructuring must be a movement that speaks for the people. The leaders of almost 5 zones or 5.5 zones or 4.5 zones of Nigeria have spoken up and they formed an organization. And the basis of the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum is restructuring. And in all these organizations, there are intellectual wings, there are youth wings, there are women wings. There is plenty of room for people to belong to. And to lead it in their various political parties. You cannot have one person come out in Nigeria and say, I'm the apostle of restructuring. Well, this is not a dictatorship. It's a democracy. No, it's the way we got independence was that a number of people got together in Lagos and they began to talk about independence. And from there, they began to form political parties and began to wager for it, began to elect people who confronted the colonial powers. A number of people must be ready to come into the political arena and help these socials of all these zones meeting in their place and taking a resolution. This is where we stand. I mean, of course, there were bound to be people who disagree with this, but the bulk of the majority of the people say we want hands. And this is part of what this program is doing, which is why we're all keeping awake to make sure that we use it to firm the movement. You can start a diaspora organization or Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum. You can launch them in every town that you are in and dovetail into the national organization and become the instrument for the restructuring of our federation. We can begin, as we're already doing, when we were forming this organization. There are a number of northerners who do not belong to the various zones that represent the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum who agree on restructuring. And they have been approaching us now and discussing about how to work with us. And we're encouraging them to form a zonal arrangement in their areas that disagrees with the orthodoxies in those zones so that we can admit them to work with us. If you have a better organizational template, we are very willing to consider it, independent of the cultural organizations. Because the important thing is for us to get at the target. It doesn't matter how many organizations are doing it. But this is a political question and it must be solved politically. But do not forget that you can take a horse to the stream, but you cannot force it to drink water. This is politics. Gandhi got independence for India by a passive resistance. It was not a violent movement. The people of India decided not to go to work and not to do anything anymore, and they paralyzed the country far more effectively than COVID-19 has paralyzed the world. It may come to a time when the people of the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum decide that if you don't want us to be restructured, we do not want to participate in any fora called Nigeria, whether it be National Assembly, whether it be common services of any type. And once we do that, that will be the tilting point.
Sorry, can you unmute him?
The necessary decisions that will alter our constitution and give us restructuring. Let us hope that this happens as quickly as possible, because the patience of our people is getting very, very, very weak. We have reached what we studied in chemistry in elasticity, which is called the Hooke's law. we have reached the point of elastic limit. Our patience has been drawn to its maximum. I hope that I have in any way covered your issues.
Thank you very much. On that note, we thank you once more for that eloquent submission. We will be, concluding with Ayo Adebanjo. Sir, you are on now. Can you please give us your concluding thoughts?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It appears some of the contributors from abroad, they are new students or agitators for Nigeria's independence or for democracy. They don't know the history of this restructuring. And they are asking us, how do you get about it? Or why have you not done it? It has been out there. The way to do it constitutionally and peacefully is calling a conference as we had in London that get back to 1954 constitution that led to the 1960 constitution by the leaders of the people. And that is why we are emphasizing, let's go back to it. And people should, I think you should be educated and listen to this. When you are talking of how do we get out there, we have been talking of sovereign national conference since the military wanted to go back to barracks. They came by force. And when they were going back, that was what led to Nwodo talking for sovereign national conference, led by a very, that we don't want force. We don't want violence. If you people are going back to the barracks, let us go back to the constitution you met us. And if you don't want to go to that, let us meet together. Whether we are going to live together or not. So those who are talking from abroad, please listen to this, because they are all agitators after maybe many of us are just 30 or 40 or 50. We have been on this struggle since 1950. That was what led to agitation for sovereign national conference at the time the military said they want to go back to the barracks. It was on that basis we the Alliance for Democracy contested the election. We won only 6 states. Because one lady was asking, how do we get it about? The man talking of going back to the National Assembly, because that's the only constitution. You are talking of contradiction in terms. The National Assembly that you have now is set up under a constitution we say we don't make. It is not our constitution. How can you ask us to amend the constitution which you say is not ours? Because that's the logic there. This assembly cannot. This is not the question of making an amendment. The constitution is a surgical operation. We must sit down as we did in 2014 to agree on whether to live together and how we are going to live together. It's fundamental. So anybody asking the question, how do we do it? That is the way to do it. That is the way Boy said no. That is what the way to do it. Outside that is violence. Because you are asking how do you do it? You must go to the constitution that they are, because that's the only constitution. That's the constitution imposed on us. How can you ask me to go to amend the constitution which I'm opposing, or to give me the constitution I want, the constitution that imposes on me? It's illogical. So the question you have to do is, let anybody who wants it agree on the sovereign national conference, and that sovereign we are talking about, OBJ was there, and he said there is only one sovereignty. I said, what sovereignty have you got? And that was what Ango Brick said. He didn't know it is that constitution. It was written by the military. How can you find out that what you don't take part in? So if you want them to be bound by the constitution, and don't forget, this is why the late William said this constitution is a fraudulent document. You refer to it as our constitution, Did we make it? You say, we, the people of the Federal Republic, are we Republic? Are we federal? So everything in our constitution is fraudulent. So that is why we let us have the constitution conference to make our constitution that will be responsible to us and subject to referendum. There's no question of assembly made under a fraudulent constitution or under an imposed constitution to decide how we are going to live together. It was the military that made the constitution. So for us to abide by the constitution, to make the constitution responsible to us, we must make it. This is the constitution made by the military. Our contention is that we are not going to abide by that. We are not going to amend any constitution that is opposed to us. We are going to make our constitution representative. So those who are asking, how do we do it? So that is why we will do the campaign of doing it constitutionally. Those who are talking of how do we do it? The alternative is violence. And that's what I said, that if you don't restructure the country, that's the end of Nigeria. Because it's under restructuring, under Congress, under which we agree, as we had on 2014, that we can live peaceably together. 2014 puts all together all that we need. We passed 600 resolutions there, agreed unanimously. All the difficulties, the religion, and everybody forgot it. And we are represented by the best Nigerian can produce. In all the religion, age, and everything, labor, judiciary, industrialists, everything we are there. Why don't you go by that? And if you say no, all right, set up your own. You cannot ask us to be amending the constitution that is imposed on us. It is not acceptable. So anybody talking that we ought to have must go by the present legislature. No. The present legislature is a product of what we want to amend. The corruption in the country is made in the constitution, and the present legislature are the products of the corruption. They cannot do it. Okay. Somebody was asking whether the governors are with us on restructuring. They cannot be with us. All the constitution, all the corrupt elements and the constitution, they are the beneficiary. By the time we review the constitution, a lot of what they are doing will not be there. How can we have a constitution where a senator or a legislator is earning more than doctors and lawyers and all that? Whereby a legislator that got into office by corruption. So forget the question of this constitution amended by the constitution. That they don't get the right thing. The foundation there is wrong, it's fraudulent. The present constitution and the assembly is fraudulent assembly. And let anybody come out and tell me that we made that constitution. And why do you want to bind me by a constitution I say I don't like? Why do you want me to amend the constitution to suit me by the provision of the constitution that I'm against? That is a question for those who are asking us to, how do you do it? How you do it is to bring pressure, as what we have said. Join us. These governors are asking us, they are not with us. It is that southern leaders that are rallying on our people. Because the present government, the present officers of government are the product of the inequitable constitution. And they will not let this to change.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful submission. I know many of us would want this conversation to continue, myself too. I mean, it's a conversation that we must keep driving, and it's a conversation that we must keep pushing. As I said at the beginning, we have had so many people, and today I'm thanking once more Chief John Nwodo, the President General Ohaneze Ndibo, and Pa Ayo Adebanjo, Elder Statesman and Afanifere Leader. In our midst today, we have Yinka Odumakin, former Governor Olusegun Mimiko, Ankyo Briggs, Chidi Onuma, and my moderator today, Daniel Elomba. Myself, I remain Mazi Tochukwu Ezoke. On that note, I will say thank you for joining us today. Keep a date with us next Friday, We are working on expanding that conversation. If everything works out fine the way we plan, we might be having the former Emir of Kano, that is Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, to join us here. That conversation must continue. We must see how we can utilize the opportunity we have today being offered to us by COVID to drive this national conversation that is not happening today. Somehow, we must get to the destination. Thank you, everyone, once more. Thank you for those joining us from all over the world, those watching us from online, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you for keeping a date. Sorry, we have to end this conversation here because it's been 3 hours and people have to go to bed. I know our elders. I can't thank you enough. Thank you once more for joining us. Okay, now I'll say good night, everyone. Remain blessed.